I was about 19, and my friends and I would hang out. We'd do guy stuff. I was very rarely at home. I was either working or I was hanging out with my friends. And one night we had the bright idea to go and play airsoft. We'd go camping, or we'd go on trips, or we'd go and play paintball or whatever. But we decided that we wanted to play near an elementary school building. And then somebody had the not so bright idea to play on top of an elementary school building. I was not very smart, and I wasn't always a good kid. Okay, and long story short, somebody called us in. And two helicopters, two cop helicopters, a K-9 unit, a SWAT team, and a handful of cop cars come and they arrest us all. There's a much longer story to be told in that, and it was awful. It ended up being the first time I was ever arrested, and there's more stories. I wasn't always a good kid, okay? But the moral of that story, okay, I got arrested. I was terrified. I go to my first court date. And we read the charges against us, and one of the charges was terrorism, because they charged us with a little bit of everything, and they got through like 7 charges against us, and they read all the fines and all the jail time, and it's like plus 10 years, $10,000 fine, and I'm just like, and my mind is exploding. I'm just absolutely terrified. We pled not guilty to everything, and then we lawyered up. We went in without a lawyer, and then we went and got a lawyer, and we went back after 3 court dates, negotiating with the courts and figuring out what we were going to do. I got slapped with community service, got a deferred sentence, and I got a fine. And I had to do community service somewhere, so I was looking for somewhere to do community service. I found this church, and one of the first things they asked me to do was help set up for a youth event. Now, when I was 19, 2 years out of high school, I had no desire to ever be at church again or ever work with teenagers. And here I was being forced on airplane mode. I couldn't go back to school. I had to take 6 months off. I couldn't leave the state and go back to Texas, so I was on forced airplane mode. And it was there where I started hanging out with these teenagers as a part of my community service. And I was like, why is the youth pastor here letting this guy who's doing community service hang out with teenagers? I didn't get it. Okay, I didn't get, but that's what happened. And I started to think, man, I wish that at this time of my life, I would have had somebody to guide me through some of the things that were going on in my life. And in that forced airplane mode, I started realizing some of the things that I was making a priority in my life didn't really matter. And it was a year later when I made the decision, you know what? Maybe I'll work with teenagers, work for a church. And if it wouldn't have been for that forced airplane mode to give me the perspective to see the hurting people around me, I have no idea where I'd be today, because that was the first church that hired me to work with teenagers. Right? What if airplane mode gives us the perspective to see the things that actually matter in our life and to put the little things back in the little thing bucket? What if that's what we need? It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me how God takes the mistakes that we have made, and he doesn't disqualify us, but he uses that stuff to help, to equip us to help others. God takes the mistakes that we've made, and that was a big mistake, and I've made some big mistakes in my life, and I let them come out when I'm on stage little by little. That was a huge mistake in my life. I really regret it, but God's used that in some big ways through forced airplane mode to help me get some perspective. And what if that time of rest, what if that time that we also desperately need but don't want to take is exactly what we need to get perspective in order to be able to have the life we're all looking for? What if our lack of perspective is one of the reasons why we're running on empty?